Hi, my name is Chris, and in this video we'll be looking at the chain of units of Tauplus. The chain of units is a function that allows you guys to display your rates and your quantity in different units at the same time. So no matter if you're a shop floor employee looking at the filler in bottles or you're planner looking at the rate in cases, you'll be able to have those multiple units no matter how the line is configured with the sensor. In order to do this, we're going to be going through three different steps together. The first one is going to be making sure we get the correct configuration of the line. After that, we'll be configuring the product itself. And finally, we're going to finish with the dashboard, making sure we can navigate through the different KPIs with the different units. So let's get started. So in today's example, we'll be using the line 4 and the orange juice product that is currently running there. So as we said, the first step is going to be to go in the configuration of the line itself. So I'm going to go in production units and look at our line 4 over here, okay? So what we have to understand here is we need to determine what is the base unit, what is the initial unit that we're using. In this case, I would highly recommend you use the unit that the sensor is actually measuring. So remember, the count we're getting from Tauplus most of the time will come from a count, so a photo eye, a signal view machine. In this case, our sensor is measuring bottles. That's why I would suggest we use the base unit as bottles. So as you can see, this is already done. The sensor on the line is capturing bottles. Therefore, we want to display bottles as our main units to have a 1-to-1 ratio. So of course, if we want to have cases and pallets, we're going to be able to configure that in the product right after this. Okay, so let's get there. As this is done, we've got the bottle. Just don't forget to save if ever you did some change. As we said, the next step is making sure that the product itself has the correct conversion, as we know that those conversions are going to be product specific, per product and per line actually. So we already have our orange juice product of line 4 that we want to configure. So we're going to go in there and see the different section to configure it. So the first section, of course, the details is the SKU and the description. So this should already be done with your product. The next one that we're going to validate is the production unit over here. So note that a product, can be associated to multiple lines. Depending on the line on which the product runs, of course, it might have different parameters. Some lines may be faster or slower, even though if they're making the same product. Okay, so packaging is not the line we're on right now. We are on line 4, so we have to validate that this base configuration is done for that product, for that line. So what we see here for line 4, my orange juice, I've said that one captured quantity, one count, equals one bottle. And that's what I said. Ideally, you'd want to have a conversion ratio of 1-to-1. Of course, it might not always be applicable, as you can see on the top one over there. Okay, so conversion factor for line 4, as I said, a 1-to-1 ratio, one count is one bottles. What we'll need to validate also is that the target rate itself, so the maximum speed of the machine, of the line for that specific product is set here in the same units. So in bottles, and in this case, bottles per hour. Okay, so note that we will be using the conversion factor to switch the 6,000 bottles per hour to cases per hour or any other units per hour target that we'll want to have. Okay, so this is well configured right now. So we've got a 1-to-1 ratio in the 6,000 bottles per hour target. Now, once this is done, the next section is going to be, of course, the conversion ratio. So as you can see here, you have units of conversion, and you've got also units of conversion for weight, length, and volume. So we're going to go with the units of conversion over here. So first of all, if I start, I'm going to add the first conversion, right? So in this case, what I want to do is go from bottles to cases. So what I can write here is that 6 bottles in our example equals at 1 case. Okay, so you can go in either way around, but in this case it's going to be easier to go from bottles to case. And then when this is done, if you want, you can also add another conversion ratio that's going to start from the cases to another unit. So by default, it's going to reuse this case unit we've put here. So let's go adding a new conversion. It's going to put the case conversion. So we said that 6 bottles equals 1 case. And then how many cases equals how many of the new units. The new units I'd like to put here is going to be, let's say, pallets. And of course, I'm going to go for 1 pallet. You can use decimal numbers if you would have liked to, but usually with the numbers, it's easier to use full number. An example here, I mean, I want to use 120 cases for one pallet, and not the opposite where I would have had some decimals there. For my conversion ratio from bottles to cases is done, from cases to pallets is done. If you'd had any other conversion unit, you could go in here and put that back in there if you want to, okay? We always recommend also you go from the smallest entity to the biggest one. So if I had some boxes in the middle between my bottles and cases, I would recommend doing that. In our situation, we're going to go from bottles to cases and then cases to pallets. So I'm going to remove this last one. The other conversion ratio we can have is going to be for the weight or length. If you're not connected to any scales, but you still want to evaluate or approximate the volume or the quantity in weight of your production, you can put a target weight for your product. So in this case, we have a 500 milliliter juice. So that's what's in the title here. So most probably this is going to be our target weight, our target volume in this case. So I can tell the system that one bottle equals how many, let's say, millimeters. I'm going to put 500 over here, which is my target. So I'm going to be able to convert my rate and my quantity milliliters or any other units. Note that now that I have milliliters in the system, of course, the system knows how to go from milliliters to liters or to other units. Of course, be aware I will not be able to go from milliliters to grams or pounds, as it's not the same kind of dimensional units here. But within the same, if it would have been grams, I can convert from gram to pounds or to kg with, of course, the standard conversion ratio that we all know. So this is the second step. So I've got my conversion ratio of units and the conversion ratio for the volume in this case. So I'm going to save this. And we're going to go to the last step, which is, of course, going to see our dashboard. So let's go back to the line 4. So what we see right now is we have the rate that is in bottles per hour. Okay, so what I want to showcase here is if I want to change my tiles and put a tiles of rate but in another units, I can go back here. The rate is under the performance tab, under the rate per hour. We're going to stay rate per hour. And then I'm going to go to the converted units. As you can see, you got weight, length, or volume. In our situation, length or weight does not apply. And volume would be the one if I wanted to go in liters per hour, something like that. For the example, let's stick to, let's say, cases per hour. You can see that all the other units are still there. Of course, if you have not configured any relation between your bottles and your cycles or boxes, of course, if I select boxes, this will be blank. So therefore, just be careful and select a unit that is configured. So in this case, as I said, we're going to go from cases. And you're going to see directly in the screen that we've got our conversion ratio or factor of 6. So we have bottles, 6,000 bottles, that's a target to 1,000. So that's a 6 ratio. So that's the same thing we've applied over here. Same thing we can do if I go back in the quantity. So if I want to have the quantity of the current products in bottles, I'm going to display in bottles. And then I can go back. I'm going to go select back in quantity. I can go in my current product and say, hey, I want to have some cases. So again, the ratio, the 6:1 ratio is going to be applied. But remember, we also had the pallets in there. So if we want, again, we can put all 3 units. So I'm going to put it back in the right order so we can see the different ratio that we have. So we said we started from bottles. From bottles, we're going to cases. So I'm going to put cases here. So bottles to cases, that's a 6-time ratio. And then from cases to pallets, if I go back here and select pallets, there's another ratio of 120 that we have put. Therefore, I can have either my quantity and my rate in the different units I wish to display over here. It will be the same principle if ever you have approximate volume or weight. Just know that if your line is connected to a check query and we're receiving weight for every product, well, of course, the quantity in grams or pounds or whatever units is going to be the real weight as well as the rate. And for the other client that will have sampling scale, we'll be able to approximate the rate based on the quantity as well as the average weight that is being sampled there. So now you have it. You can now put as much units as you need in here and have the different conversion ratio. Just make sure you follow the 3 steps, that your line is well configured, that your product is well configured, and that on your dashboard you have displayed the right unit, and you'll be able to have unit that will be able to speak to anyone in your company. Thanks for your time, and see you in the next video.